In the emergency preparedness community, there are quite a few people who believe that barter trade supplies are pointless. Although it is indeed impossible to accumulate 1,000 lighters hoping to exchange them for food or water in a crisis, such supplies have their place. There are many scenarios in which a barter economy can manifest, and they are not necessarily linked to a complete collapse, like in the movie Mad Max. The exchange of goods and services has existed since ancient times. Even work today is a form of barter. You trade your time for money, and the perceived value of that money allows you to go to the store and exchange some bills for a liter of milk. As I said, provided the perceived value is high enough for the store to accept this bill and exchange it for something they need or want. Here, inflation comes into play. The higher the inflation, the less value or perceived value of the dollar. This means that more banknotes will be needed, and with hyperinflation, the situation worsens. The perceived value of the dollar drops so much that people stop accepting it, and that's when bartering becomes relevant. There are many situations where supplies for barter trade can be useful and even necessary. In this video, I will share my rules for stockpiling for barter trade, best practices, when to consider trading, in what situations it may be appropriate, and with whom it is safe or fraught with dangers. There are many factors beyond the supplies themselves, but without them, nothing will work. So let's break this down in more detail. First, I will note the medical supplies. These can include bandages, antiseptics, medications, and other items in the basic first aid kit. Many of them will be useful in various situations, not just in emergencies. Unlike other people, we have the opportunity to plan everything in advance. If hospitals are overcrowded, unavailable, or too expensive, people will look for such supplies. Therefore, medical supplies can become a good item for barter trade. Next in line are fire-starting supplies, including lighters, matches, and igniting tools like flint and steel. If the electricity is out for a long time, most people probably have matches and maybe even lighters at home, but in a prolonged situation, these items will become quite valuable. We have many ways to start a fire, but for the average person, supplies for igniting a fire can be very valuable. People probably don't think about this too much, as it's enough to simply turn the thermostat. But in the event of a disaster or emergency, as I mentioned, the perception of value changes. This can become quite important in such a situation. Furthermore, I have tools, which may include knives, axes, handsaws, screwdrivers, a multitude of different tools that may come in handy. I'm not talking about stocking up on 20 or 30 shovels or axes just in case. I have plenty of screwdrivers in my drawers, as well as sets of sockets, and I probably have 3 or 4 of the same size. Over the years, I've accumulated many different pairs of pliers. It's not necessary to buy and stockpile everything unless you find a really good price, but having a few extras never hurts. You never know when a situation will arise where someone needs something and you need another, and it can become a useful item for trade. The next thing I have is clothing, and that doesn't mean buying 100 different shirts. Instead of throwing away or donating old clothes, maybe it's worth keeping them in boxes. I have old shirts, jackets, gloves, socks. Such items can be valuable to someone if store shelves are empty or non-existent. Clothing can become what others need and may even become part of a barter. For example, I can offer a couple of jackets and add some t-shirts or a pair of socks to make the deal more attractive. Clothing can be a useful commodity for trade, although there are other things that may be more valuable and useful. This brings me to the next point: hygiene products, soap, toothpaste, even toilet paper. Everyone remembers what happened to toilet paper during the pandemic. Feminine hygiene products are an important matter that we, men, often overlook, but they are absolutely essential. While most people have enough soap, toothpaste, and toilet paper to last for a while, these can become scarce over time. We can store enough soap and toothpaste, but it's important to remember not to hoard them only for trade. Otherwise, we will find ourselves in a situation where we have to trade to get soap or toothpaste because we gave away all our supplies. Hygiene products can become a valuable commodity for exchange. The next topic I want to discuss is fuel. This is quite a complex issue, as in most emergencies it will be scarce, making it highly sought after and valuable. If you have other ways to provide energy, like solar panels, or you have enough propane, and you need something so badly that you're willing to part with 1 or 2 canisters, fuel will be very valuable, and alongside it, stoves and similar items used with this fuel will also be important. It will be hard to part with it, but depending on the situation, it may be necessary. Fuel is one of those things to think twice about, but it will definitely be in high demand, regardless of the situation. The next item is shelter materials like tarps, tents, and ropes. These items may be useful not only in case of emergency evacuation, but also for sealing windows depending on the type of disaster that has occurred. Whether it's a pandemic or something similar, people may need to seal their homes, and such items can become very valuable. Next on the list are batteries, and I would place them at the top among valuable trade goods. Everyone probably has a few batteries lying around at home, and those preparing for disasters will have even more than the average person. People use batteries for their remote controls and other devices, but when they run out, which happens faster than most expect, batteries will start to be used for flashlights and other things. Once they run out, people will actively seek them, and their value will significantly increase. Common AA, AAA, D, and 9V batteries will become very valuable goods in times of disaster. As with everything else on this list, don't be too quick to exchange supplies, or you may find yourself without batteries at a critical moment. In any catastrophic situation, the main thing is to take care of yourself. Continuing the topic of batteries, is worth mentioning flashlights, candles, and headlamps, which will also be very valuable. Many of us probably have 15 to 20 flashlights in various places around the house. These flashlights can be bought cheaply at the store, and it won't be a big expense if you decide to purchase 10 or 20 extras. In a situation where the electricity is off, even the cheapest flashlights will be more valuable than gold. Another important item on my list is, in times of crisis, seeds can become very valuable. This is a complex topic, as most people have no idea about gardening, other than the basic notion of planting a seed in the ground, watering it, and hoping for the best. This is the general understanding of gardening in our time. However, in a situation of hyperinflation, when food becomes extremely expensive, people will start gardening. Just like in the era of victory gardens a few decades ago, they will learn how to properly care for plants, and seeds will become in demand. They are small, can be packed in compact packages so they can be stored in large quantities. The seeds hardly spoil and will be relevant in various emergencies. The next few items on my list are quite controversial, but they may prove valuable for trade. The first is alcohol and tobacco. These are things that people need in everyday life or in stressful situations. I was a smoker myself and can say that if you need a cigarette, it is absolutely necessary. The same goes for alcohol and even marijuana. All these bad habits will be in high demand, especially if they are not available in stores. However, one must remember the risks. People willing to trade food for cigarettes, alcohol, or marijuana can be dangerous. This brings us to the next point, ammunition. This is another controversial topic. I often hear that you shouldn't give someone something they can use against you. It's important to consider who you are trading with. If you're going to organize something like a market after the collapse, you definitely need a good security team because people around will know what you have. If you decide to trade ammunition, make sure you do it with those you know and trust. Thus, alcohol, tobacco, and ammunition can become valuable resources for exchange. But you must be very careful. It all depends on the situation. If we are talking about some apocalyptic scenario, I wouldn't trade ammunition. The next item on my list is fishing gear. It's the simplest way to obtain protein for those who don't hunt and can't set traps. Learning to fish can be difficult, but it's a useful skill. Light fishing gear, such as hooks and sinkers, is very compact, easy to store, and can last a long time. However, if you do not have such equipment, which probably applies to many people, having a spool of fishing line, even just 30 meters, a few hooks, and sinkers can be quite valuable. Depending on your location, such items may be in demand by many. Moreover, such items are small enough to be stored in reasonable quantities, so you won't have to worry about giving them all away. The next point is non-perishable foods. They shouldn't be given away, as food and water are the two most important aspects of survival. Be very careful with bartering when it comes to food and water. I still added them to the list because we have canned goods and other supplies, and we inevitably accumulate a lot of expired products. We have a separate stash of such items in the house, those that are on the brink. If needed, we can use them. We will open the can, check if everything is fine, eat it if it is, otherwise throw it away. This supply is separate from our main food stock, which is still within the expiration date. Basic food products are meant only for us, while we use expired products for barter situations. However, this is a very delicate issue, as one might find themselves in a situation where food runs out faster than expected. It's also worth mentioning the means for cleaning water. Filters and water purification tablets can be excellent trade items, as they are easy to accumulate and some are inexpensive. They are compact and portable, making them much more convenient in barter trade than large bills. For example, Sawyer Mini and Lift Straw filters cost about $20 each. If you find a good price, why not get a few extras? In an emergency, such filters can become a valuable item for trade or for friends and family who do not have similar means. You may not receive something material in return, but in that case, you will be building trust and friendship. There is a rule of reciprocity. You give something, and the person feels a sense of obligation to you. Providing for water purification is an important thing. Like with food, I would be cautious about the quantity and what I give away. But in times of disaster or emergency, such things can be very valuable. The last point I want to discuss may be one of the most significant. We often work and spend time for money, which involves exchanging our skills. Everyone has their strengths, be it carpentry, car repair, medical knowledge, or hunting experience. This highlights the importance of community, as one person cannot know everything. For example, someone might be an expert in gardening, and if that is you, your skills could be useful to someone who bought seeds from you. Thus, you haven't just sold the seeds, but you can also help with their cultivation, making them even more valuable in times of natural disaster. Experience in construction can also come in handy. We all probably have something we are good enough at to exchange these skills. Regardless of whether the situation lasts a week or two, or a longer period, skills remain one of the main resources that cost nothing but your efforts, yet can help you get what you need in an emergency. As I mentioned at the beginning, I would like to discuss some best practices and rules I have regarding barter deals and storing barter supplies. The first and foremost rule is that supplies for barter trade should not be collected right now. First, take care of your basic needs, and then, as you accumulate supplies, you can think about barter goods. There's no need to immediately buy 2,000 lighters unless you find a great deal. But if over time you gradually accumulate medical supplies, fire-starting materials, matches, and the like, you will have a decent stock. This will prepare you for a barter economy, whether at a local level or on a larger scale. But always take care of your own needs first and try to avoid situations where you have to barter. It's better to be the one who has the advantage in such situations, as this is the essence of bartering. This is a game of market forces, and if you are prepared in advance while someone else is not, you will be in a winning position. This does not mean you should exploit others, just that you should gain value where possible. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are not talking about a complete collapse like in the movie Mad Max, where everything falls apart and the government disappears in 2 years. This is unlikely to happen. However, there are many other scenarios. Even today, in a situation where a barter economy is starting to develop, for example in your area, this can become quite useful. We have hens that lay too many eggs for us to eat. As I said, if you give something to someone, that person feels they owe you something in return. This is how you build relationships. You don't have to wait for a disaster to start developing your trading skills. There are natural disasters when people will need things. There can be hyperinflation situations where people simply lack money to go to the store, and you have what they need. While you don't necessarily need money, you can trade it for something else. There are many different scenarios where bartering becomes valuable, including today's realities. It's important to find time to practice these skills now. As for barter supplies, I have a few rules that I follow. First, it should be something with a very long shelf life, possibly even infinite. For example, lighters, matches, candles, all those things that will last a long time, and I won't worry about them getting spoiled. I prefer items that can be used on a daily basis to allow for rotation. Another rule I try to follow is that the goods should be portable and small. Lighters, seeds, water purification tablets. These are little things that are easy to carry. You don't need to carry 20 gallons of gasoline, but a few lighters or a pack of seeds is quite convenient. If you trade such items, it will be easier for the other party if they have to move. Therefore, small items are much easier to use for barter deals. The last rule I follow: I never buy something solely for a barter deal unless it's an amazing offer that's hard to refuse. For example, if you can buy a whole box of lighters for $10, it's almost an undeniable deal, and in that case, I might break my rule. If you find something advantageous at a thrift store, that could also be a good option. A garage sale or something similar is a situation where the principles of exchange can be utilized. I see this as an opportunity. and it's one of the reasons why I believe such things can become a good resource for barter trade. All I'm talking about are my rules. As you may have noticed, almost everything on this list can be used for exchange. I have only listed items related to preparation, but in reality, it depends on where you are, what the needs of the people around you are, and what you have. In principle, any item can become a barter item, but never put yourself in a situation where you lack something because you've given everything away. I also made a video discussing 20 preparedness items that can be used as barter supplies. These items will be useful in everyday life and can also become valuable in a trading situation. If you are interested, watch the video. If you have thoughts or ideas, I am sure many other things can be added to this list, so leave comments below. That's all for today.